Hi, TheSuffolkRam here from Rant Nerds. Welcome to another Ram Rants. I've just done a bit of a long play, I suppose you could say. It was only a couple of years ago since it came out, but done a bit of a long play on So You're Being Hunted. In fact, I've recorded a Let's Play that will upload to the channel over the next few days, so keep an eye out for that. So You're Being Hunted was a game one of the few games I actually spawned early access. I remember coming across it on the internet and looking great. Basic premise: think of a combination of fox hunting and going on a bird shoot, except you play the fox. That's what So You're Being Hunted is about. You are a scientist. You end up through mysterious reasons on this island, and you have to avoid robots. Why are you avoiding the robots? Well, they're hunting you for starters. And basically, you have this stone circle which you find when you first start, allows you to relate to get off the island. But you need to find the parts for it that make it work, because they've been scattered all over the place as part of the teleportation when you went there. So you have to find these parts, and you have to hide from the robots. Parts are reasonably easy to find, and these little will-o-wisps that sort of highlight them for you, so they'll show you the way. I tend to use them mainly for guides. I'll sort of watch and see what direction they head in, and like, okay, that's roughly where I'm going. And then after a while, you do tend to follow them. The game itself is split onto 5 islands. You may say that the centre island, which has 5 pieces on it. Then the 4 surrounding islands have 3 pieces on it, which you get to explore one at a time. So you explore the islands, you find your bits, bring back to those stones, you put them in the stones, and after you get all 17, you escape. Now, I mentioned before you're being hunted by robots, and there's loads of cool different types of robots in the game. The first one is the most common, is the hunter, which is literally what imagine sort of your typical, I would say, sort of Wardian era gentleman walking around with a shotgun doing a bird shoot. He's your normal robot. They usually start off initially a couple in a group, and then as time goes on, you end up about 4 or 5. I did see 6 in a group once. Wander around. They basically form little hunting parties, and they sort of patrol the map. If they see you, they'll chase you out. If they come across villages, they'll also patrol the villages. These are bad because villages are where you find all your resources. This is where you get to go into buildings for food and water and stuff to keep you alive, because the whole time you're playing the game, you're this thing called vitality, which is ticking down, and when it gets to 0, basically you start to starve to death. What's nice about it is if it's below 50, you can't heal health. You don't regain any health. Admittedly, you regain it quite slowly. It's really much good in a firefight, but the game's not about firefights. But you want to keep it above sort of 50 really all the time. I tend to let it get a bit low, unless I'm injured, then I'll get it up to heal myself, as it were. So they'll guard the villages, which is a pain. They also, if they find a piece, they'll guard it. You tend to get groups between sort of 2 and 4 guarding various areas. That's your basic with the hunter. So they're by themselves are not actually that bad. One-on-one, you're actually quite bad. You can even sneak up on them if you're really clever. But when they're in a group, potentially quite hazardous. I will say they seem to have gotten, playing it now from when I played before, perhaps I'm misremembering, they seem to have gotten worse shots. That might be just me misremembering, or just got better at avoiding them. But I do have a distinct feeling that they used to be a lot better shot back when I first played So You're Being Hunted. I strongly remember them being far better shots and able to kill you quite quickly if you weren't careful. So it was a lot harder to run away from them. Helping Hunter are other types of robots. So an early one you'll see will be what they call the balloon. This basically randomly floats around the map, and he basically has a searchlight. If you get it caught in the searchlight, he sounds an alarm and lets all the robots nearby to come find you. Now, unlike the robots you can hide in sort of long grass, tall fields and so forth, he can see through that. The only thing he can't see through is hard cover, such as buildings. So you'll find yourself sort of watching out for him, or you'll just be occasionally concentrating on the robots, not realising all of a sudden you'll just hear the alarm go off because he's floated over you. You can shoot out the searchlight to stop that happening, but beware, shooting makes noise. But that's only a temporary solution, because you'll soon recover and come back to find you. One of the other types of robots you'll encounter reasonably early on is the Hound. Now, talking about encountering robots, just before I go on to the Hound, when I first played it, I thought the robots seemed to come at you a lot sooner. Different types seem to unlock a lot sooner. They don't seem to do it so much. Now, they do unlock under 2 circumstances, either time or numbers of pieces of found, whichever comes first. So you can't sort of take your time too long about the game, because otherwise you may end up with like 16 pieces to find and loads of robots around. So the best thing to do is to go for the pieces sort of as soon as, and the robots will unlock at a naturally good progression rate for you to be a challenge. Now the Hound, just back to the Hound quickly. These move around the hunters. The reason I put them next to they tend to support the hunters, often forming the groups. They have a habit of if they have basically like sort of better range of view than the hunters do, so they can hear you sooner, they can see you sooner. They all then chase after you, quite easy to take out, but if they get you, what they do is they pin you down and basically hold you still for the hunter to come and get you. So nasty bits of work. Interesting, what I like about Soviet hunters is that there's loads of robots there designed to counter all the main tactics you can use to avoid hiding from the hunters. So we already mentioned the balloon. That's there to counter you hiding along grass all the time. Otherwise, you can avoid basically the hunters all the time if you hide along grass. And like with the dogs aren't so fooled easy by the long grass. They move quite fast. They can soon track you down. Other types of robots you'll encounter, the Squire. Now, the Squire used to happen really early on when I first saw us play, but he seems to come in quite late now. The Squire patrols the village. Now, interestingly, he is not hostile to you at first. He'll basically wander around the villages, sort of guiding. Now, if he finds you stealing, that's when he turns hostile. It seems to be a case of, doesn't necessarily have to see you stealing, just to have a good enough suspicion that you are stealing for him to turn hostile. So, can be quite a pain in the ass, but overall, you can avoid him. As you can even walk up to him, he won't worry about you. He'll just quite happily ignore you. You've then got just a thing called the Bog Monster. This is mainly encountered when you get to water. Because again, another thing you could use to do is you could hide in water quite well. Allow you to sort of move your eyes, and all the hunters would get really confused and wouldn't be able to follow you, obviously, into the water very easily. So we have a Bog Monster, and what he'll do is if you spend too much time in the water, it'll just emerge out of the water and it will attack and it will kill you. It is invulnerable, so you can't finish it off, and it basically will cut you to pieces. Really nasty thing to happen. Slightly bugs out occasionally. You can actually be on dry ground, but near enough to water that it'll actually get you, which I suppose sort of makes sense. But it's a bit like the mechanical version of that thing from the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, which I did know the name of, but I can't remember now. A bit like a mechanical version of that. But yeah, nice to be a kit, and it's quite cool the first time you see it rise out of the water. One of the other types of robots in the game is called the Poacher. Now, he's an interesting case because he's actually not like the other robots. They will actually attack him if they see him, but he tends to hang around the forest areas, which would make sense if he's a poacher. And what he does is quite nice. He leaves traps for you. This is what I'm saying, Ben, about sort of the game trying to counter your tactics. So one of the other tactics you could do is hide in forests. It's a good place to hide him because it's very rarely patrolled through them. They chase through them. They don't really patrol through them. But if you were in the forest, you could hide from them quite well. So to counter that, the poacher come along. He leaves traps, and if you walk into one of his traps, it catches you, holds you, unless you get dismantled quickly enough, he gets alerted. He comes along and he shoots you. Now his gun is actually called the Blunderbuss, does about 90 damage. You've only got 100 health, so 2 shots of that, you're gone, you're dead out the game. So he's quite nice to identify. He does look a bit weird. But if you get him, the Blunderbuss is an awesome weapon if you can get hold of it. But he's a bit annoying. But again, I like the fact that they're countering something that you could do. The other type, and possibly the most scariest type, was actually released around Halloween, which makes sense. It's called the Scarecrow. Now, the Scarecrow is, the first time I encountered it, was absolutely terrified me. I never quite encountered a monster quite like it, and I actually sat there to think how on earth I was going to get away from it. So you're in a field, and you see a Scarecrow. You think, oh, it's a Scarecrow. I think that's interesting. And you walk near it, nothing seems to happen. And then you walk up to it, and it starts making a funny noise, rocking back and forth, and it starts saying, over here! Let's know what's your presence. You think, oh, it's just a thing to alert to my presence if I go in a field like an alarm. So you turn around and run away. And then you hear in the back of your ear, over here, he's over here, I'm behind you. You think, what? Turn around, and he's there again. Or she's there, you don't know. Might be for you. And it's there again. It's transport behind you. As soon as you take your eyes off it, it teleports behind you, and it keeps teleporting behind you, unless, well, put it differently, the only way to avoid it teleporting behind you is to clock onto it and walk backwards until it deactivates and goes quiet again. As long as you stare at it, it won't move. A bit like the Weeping Angels from Doctor Who. If you watch Doctor Who, obviously you know I'm a fan. If you've done anything on the channel, you'll know I'm a fan. So, utterly terrifying the first time I find it. I remember trying to avoid it. I think in the end, the first one I couldn't work out how to do it. In the end, I just got a hatchet out and just whacked it to death. But it takes a lot of hits to kill it. But eventually I did. But yeah, it's constantly knowing the robots to your presence. So you see them, you just want to avoid them. But so you can't just blindly walk through a field anymore. You have to look out for these threats. You then have the rider. The rider is, well, to put it nicely, it's a horse with jets. So basically, it's a VTOL horse that the robot rides robots around. And what it does, it will basically hunts around. Works very similar to the normal robots. There's not really much behaviour, which is a bit of a shame because I suppose there's not really how many ways they could make its behaviour slightly different. It'd be nice if they worked in packs and perhaps were try to herd you in a way. But it basically will come and charge and run you over. It's more irritating than a threat. It's not really much worse than Hunters, to be honest. I looked forward to that. I was looking forward to that being implemented. I was quite disappointed when it came in, which is a bit of a shame. Finally, you have this. Well, I say finally. I didn't check my notes and see if I've got everything. You have the landowner. He makes a horrific noise. He's huge. He's like taller than most of the buildings in the game. And when you finally come across him, you can't miss him when you come across him. He basically straddles the islands, wanders around, and if he sees you, you can't escape from him. He will just keep hunting you and following you and following you. You can't get away from him. Apparently there are a couple of bugs that allow you to get away from him, but generally speaking, once he's following you, he will keep following until you get him. So basically, he's not very fast, so you cannot run him, but you're gonna, once you know he's there, he's on the route for you. A bit like the Terminator, you just can't escape from him. So the key thing is not to learn. Unfortunately, he's got a couple of dogs with him, so they can alert him to your presence very kindly, which is a bit irritating, but there you go, that's what he's done for. So he's the last type, he's one of the last implemented, but he's really cool. I think he's quite cool. I remember the first time I come across him and accidentally alerted him, and I remember just hating the fact of being constantly hunted. It was really scary and but fun at the same time. That's the key from what I'm saying, it's fun. It's very much a story generator. You'll have these stories of, you know, oh, I'll critically sort of hunt. I managed to avoid like 2 groups of robots by very carefully managing to like moving away through the field in such a way to avoid them too. And I thought I was going to get caught by the balloon, but a good example I came across. I was in a village that's been trod up and down by robots. There's a balloon overhead. One side of the building I'd be spotted by the robots. The other side I'd be spotted by the balloon. I had to manage running back and forth both sides to avoid getting caught by both. And when you do, the sense of, brilliant, comes over you. It's phenomenal, fantastic. One thing I want to say about the game itself is the worlds are procedure generated. So I mentioned you have 5 islands. Now each island can have a theme. The default theme is rural, which your centre island always is. But the other 4 islands you can pick up for things. Now your main theme is rural, so let's go for rural. Rural is literally as it sounds. It's lots of little city villages, connected together by fields, so quite a lot of good cover to hide in. Food forest, but relatively open. Lots of villages in there as well. You've then got mountain, which the name suggests is very mountainous, very tall thing, so you need to get the sort of high ground. Quite good, you get quite high, look around for threats and so forth and see them, which is neat. Get a tour, but it makes stealth quite interesting. It tends to be a lot more forestry as well, so it's sometimes I find mountains quite easier level to go across. You then castle, which is basically a very built up castle area. Tends to be the most issues with procedure generation I tend to find. Tends to get some weird things happen in it. You've got industrial, which is a very make you think of sort of up north sort of turn century industrial revolution. Really bleak atmosphere, full of canals, lots of buildings to hide around. Quite fun, quite almost urban environment. You've also got the fens, which is a very open environment. So basically rural but a lot more open, and that's a horrible one to play in. I always like to put one of each type in the map just to give a bit of variety, to give each island a challenge. Otherwise, it will get a bit samey. But I do like to have it very nice to go online and have a little bit of a different experience. My only criticism of the biomes I do find is they all feel like they're variations of a theme. They all feel like they've got the rural template and slap some stuff onto it. So industrial, more buildings and a canal. Fens, less fields. And that's probably what it actually is, truth be told. I would perhaps like a lot more variance in them. I mean, I'd like an urban one, which is literally you land on it and it is there's no forest, no woods. It matters that they'll park in there, but it's just an urban sprawl. That would be cool. That'd be cool to navigate through that and avoid the robots trying to remember your way round the island. That would be really neat. I mean, you could do lots of sort of things. I mean, I'd like to have perhaps some more. The default rule setting is quite random, like very again, sort of quite turn of the century sort of fighting. I would like perhaps a more regimented one. Feels a little bit more modern. Perhaps we have high machinery stores and so forth. I mean, I'm saying these things is what I would like, but actually, fact, they've said that the single player is now complete. There will be no further patches for it, so what we've got is what we've got. But if they make a second one, guys, which I hope you guys do, that would be some neat ideas to try. Total customization of the game. I mentioned you could customize which biomes you got. The game is very customizable. You can pick like all the robot spawns when you start the game. You can pick how often the robots spawn at what times and how many there are. You can basically make the game virtually impossible by doing that. But it means if you are a seasoned player, you can add to the challenge. It's also possible to hack the I've got the name of them. The files it uses. I'll watch them later. But it's possible that hack the file. I won't say XNA files. They're not XNA files. XML, that's the one. Makes it use a lot of XML data. It's possible to hack those as well, if you want to get behind the scenes. But they've added lots of controls in the interface to allow you to hack it yourself, which makes the game really cool. So I must admit, I've really enjoyed it. They're now launching a multiplayer mode. I'm going to see if I can get 3 friends together to try and play the multiplayer mode with. See what it's like. It seems to be more of a competitive team-based game. I would like perhaps more of a cooperative team-based game, but well, what can you do? If that's what they're doing, perhaps they'll add that on as a later date. That'd be quite neat. So I've enjoyed going back to So Being Hunted. So I'm doing a Let's Play that should be on the site in the next few days to get around to finishing recording it and editing it. That'll be on the site next few days, hopefully. I'm going to do it in 5 parts, 1 for each of the islands. So you'll get to see like a different one each day. So in summary about So Being Hunted, loving the game. I've loved going back to it. It feels like a slightly different experience because they've obviously changed things in the various patches. Would I recommend you going it? If you like Thief, you'll love So Being Hunted. If you like stealth games, you'll love it. If you are something like a shooter game, you're not going to like it. It's not a shooter. Although you've got guns in it, it's not a shooter. You'll get disappointed if you try that. If you try and doing a shooting version of it, you won't find that enjoyable. So it's definitely a stealth-based game. But if you like that, you'll love it. Seriously recommend picking it up. Support these guys. They're still developing for it. 2 years after its release, putting the multiplayer mode in, which is cool. Brilliant, guys. The fact they're still doing that is just fantastic. And so I think we should keep supporting these all developers, and I hope they go far. So give it a go. I think you'll enjoy it. So thank you very much for watching. This has been another Rant. I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you.